So let's talk about the difference between an abstinence-based treatment for alcohol addiction versus the Sinclair method. So many of you probably already know what abstinence type of treatments look like for alcohol addiction, where the first step is really to abstain from the alcohol. And the belief is really that you can never touch alcohol again. You have to abstain for the rest of your life because one drink will turn into a binge. So with abstinence-based treatments, people are typically required to detox from the alcohol or just quit drinking and then not touch alcohol again and work some type of recovery program like the 12 steps. This is how we've been treating alcohol addiction for the better part of the last century, at least here in the United States. Now, with the Sinclair method, it's a completely different approach to alcohol addiction because it does not require abstinence. In fact, the treatment is started while someone is still drinking. And the goal with the Sinclair methods is really to help people using a harm reduction approach to essentially reduce harms around their alcohol consumption. This treatment really helps most people reduce the amount of alcohol that they're drinking over time and get to a place where they have a sense of regained control if and when they do drink. For a lot of people, their craving and their desire for alcohol fades away over time, and they can get to a place of indifference with alcohol. With the Sinclair method, abstinence is not required because what happens for a lot of people, most of us in fact, is that they can get to a place where they have regained control over alcohol. So if someone wants to do this treatment with a goal or a desire to be a moderate drinker, it's definitely possible through this treatment, again, because of how it's working to essentially help someone unlearn the behavior of alcohol addiction using the medication naltrexone, following the protocol of the Sinclair method, which is to take naltrexone 1 hour before drinking. So that is the biggest difference between an abstinence-based treatment versus the Sinclair method, is that the Sinclair method is not abstinence-based. In fact, someone is still drinking alcohol on this treatment, with the goal to really reduce their consumption and get to a place where they're drinking at safer levels, or get to a place where they're able to go alcohol-free because their brain gets healed and restored and is no longer addicted to alcohol. Now, the challenge with abstinence-based treatments is something known as the alcohol deprivation effect. This is a well-researched phenomenon which shows that when someone has an alcohol addiction and they abruptly quit drinking, what happens is that their brain goes into deprivation mode because it's being starved of the reward that it's used to getting from alcohol. That's why alcohol is so addictive, because it's so rewarding for our brain. And so when someone goes abstinent and abruptly quits drinking, what happens for a lot of us is that we feel deprived of it. And whenever we're deprived of anything, what happens? Our craving for it, our desire for it, our motivation for it increases. So a lot of people will abstain from alcohol, but then their craving will start to kick in and their desire for alcohol will kick in, and it will become so overwhelming that eventually they will give into it. And if you look at the statistics with abstinence-based treatments, it's estimated that 80% or more of people will relapse within 6 months of leaving treatment. And I believe this is largely due to the deprivation effect, because they're craving alcohol, they have this intense desire for it because of what's going on in the brain, and so they end up giving into that desire eventually because the fight just becomes exhausting, and then this kind of continues and perpetuates the relapse cycle. What the deprivation effect also showed is that when somebody is deprived of alcohol and then they return to drinking again, they will tend to binge on the alcohol at a rate up to 15 times more than when they were drinking before. And again, you can think about this like if you're being deprived of water and you're super thirsty and you finally get your hands on a glass of water, you will probably binge it or chug it. And something that's also important to know is that the part of the brain that is impacted by an alcohol addiction is a very powerful, primitive part of the brain that really overrides any logic or reason. Alcohol addiction is not a logical behavior because the part of the brain that's being impacted is actually mistaking alcohol to something that it needs to survive. And the reason that it's doing that is because of the flood of endorphin reward and pleasure that the brain gets from alcohol. It's far beyond anything else that we get in life. And so when the brain gets used to having that reward from alcohol, and then all of a sudden it's gone, it feels like it's being starved of something that it needs to survive. And again, that's why the craving increases and people are more likely to binge afterward. And so I hope this explains for you what the difference is between an abstinence-based treatment for alcohol addiction and the challenges that can come with it, like the alcohol deprivation effect, versus the Sinclair Method as a treatment protocol that is really geared to help people to start treatment by reducing their drinking over time, to repair what's going on in the brain, the neural pathways that are driving the alcohol addiction in the first place, and help someone get to a place where they are drinking at safe, moderate levels, or get to a place where they're able to more easily go alcohol free because their brain has been repaired and they're no longer craving or desiring alcohol. The end goal of the Sinclair Method is called pharmacological extinction of the alcohol addiction, which essentially means the addiction has been reversed inside of the brain. And when that happens, it becomes really easy for most of us to become indifferent to alcohol, where we're drinking here and there, maybe socially, but we're never binge drinking. And other people like myself end up going alcohol free just because we become so uninterested in alcohol. So you can learn more about the Sinclair Method as always and get started with the link in my profile, or all my videos on here are about it. Bye for now.